You ready for rapid fire?
Let me grab the oxygen tank, and then I think I'm ready for,
All
for
right.
rapid fire.
So Mitchell Evans now leads the Irish with 18 catches and 272 receiving yards. Do you buy or sell him leading the team in both categories at the end of the season?
I am going to sell that at this point in the season. We're at the halfway point. It's we've talked about this before. I just think with some of the wide receivers being banged up recently, and Mitchell Evans getting more of like a ideal kind of matchup, I would say that he's just been kind of the guy recently. But again, Sam Hartman's not going to lock in to anyone. He's not just going to throw the ball to throw the ball. And that's going to be the trend the rest of the season. I just think there's going to be a lot of guys hovering around the same amount of catches and the same amount of total yards. And so I don't think I have enough certainty to say that this guy or that guy is going to be the leading receiver in terms of receptions or yards. It just varies game by game. And then at the end of the year, I think a lot of those numbers are going to be very similar to each other.
I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I guess it's been 3 weeks or so ago, maybe four at this point, going on a month ago when they played North Carolina State. Holden Stays had the massive game, and all anyone wanted to talk about with Notre Dame's tight ends was Holden Stays. He had over 100 yards, remember, in that game against the Wolfpack. And now Mitchell Evans puts together back-to-back games where he has big numbers. And of course, this one being the exclamation point. And important to remember, obviously, that Jaden Thomas and Jaden Greathouse, who are Notre Dame's top two receivers going into last week's game against Duke, were both out for that game. So I think you're right. It's just going to keep getting spread around. It's going to be relatively even. This thing, there's going to be a cycle, I think, where Holden Stays kind of comes back, and we'll see more Holden Stays as well. So I would sell this. I cannot say with complete certainty. Maybe he ends up leading the team in one of those two categories just based on what he's doing right now. But I mean, the ball's going to get distributed. Sam Hartman's going to throw that thing around, and I think Sam kind of is probably going to get a little bit deeper in the film room these next couple of weeks and kind of look at some things that he's not seeing maybe. And because there were some other wide open opportunities that he had where he just, I don't think, saw a receiver that was wide open, and that potentially, it's not all going to go to Mitchell Evans or to anyone else for that matter. I think it's gonna be distributed around.
I
Fill
want
in the
to
more. Yep, go ahead.
very quickly, if you could highlight the Anthony Solomon chat about Sam is on pace for 2,900 yards and 28 touchdowns. We're at the midway point of the season, and I don't know if you remember, but those numbers are like extremely accurate to what the preseason numbers were. I'm pretty sure the preseason numbers were like 2,800, and I want to say the over under was like 26 and a half
26 and a
touchdowns.
half. Yeah.
And so like he is that I felt good about the passing touchdowns until last game because he had 0 passing touchdowns. So he kind of maybe fell behind schedule a tad bit. But I guess I'm saying like it's crazy how accurate those preseason. I know there's still 6 games left, but those numbers are like pretty much half of like at the halfway point of the season, he's on pace for what the preseason kind of values were looking like.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also important to remember that the pace only slowed down because of the fact that he played the two best defenses on the schedule these last 2 weeks. Like
Yes.
he was well ahead of this. And I think based on the defenses he's going to, see the rest of the season, I think he's going to end up with well over 30 touchdowns.
I think we're going to be looking at 30 and 3,000.
Yeah. I think he's going to exceed both of those.
Especially that USC game if it turns into what we think it might.
Yeah. Exactly. Because we had the not argument, but we had the discussion on IB Countdown last week about what Colorado was going to be able to score against USC, and Vince was pretty skeptical that Colorado was going to be able to score because he's like, well, they looked inept against Oregon. Well, Oregon's got a legit defense. USC does not. And look at what Colorado ended up putting against USC. I mean, Colorado's got a good offense, but I think Notre Dame's is a lot more consistent than what we've seen from Colorado so far. So I think you're going to see a lot of points in that game. And Notre Dame's going to have the best defense on the field in that game as well. But we're talking about Sam Hartman, and I think he's going to be over both 3,000 and 30 touchdowns when it's all said and done. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Fox's Joel Klatt says Notre Dame's win over Duke was all guts.
I think that Joel Klatt's comments was like hitting the hammer on the nail. Like they were spot on to me, because there was a lot of sloppy play. And, again, I know it's kind of Tuesday, and, people have probably heard a lot of things about different opinions and, outlook on how the game went. The offense struggled point blank. They had a lot of guys, like you said, they had their top 2 wide receivers out. They were obviously coming off the big game against Ohio State. They underperformed in a lot of ways, but that last drive was all guts and who wanted it more, essentially, who was going to step up in the moment. And so I agree with Joel Klatt, because, again, I think everything leading up to that point was relatively sloppy, and you just kind of had to throw all of that out the window, look at it as a tie game with 2 minutes left, and what are we going to do to go down the field and score? And to me, that's all guts.
Yeah, I mean, just look at 4th and 16. If you want to look at 4th and 16 as a microcosm of that whole thing, like we were talking about earlier, who runs for it on 4th and 16 with the game on the line? And as Herb Street said during the broadcast, with maybe your whole season on the line, who runs for it? The quarterback, the guy with the most guts. And he did. And then, another guy with some big guts, Estime took it in after that for the touchdown. And one of the points that Klatt was making in his podcast when he was talking about this is your back-to-back games in 2 physical games with Ohio State and Duke, and you're at the tail end of that when everyone's gassed out there, when it's either
like the final round of a boxing match.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is a heavyweight fight, and who's got the last punch in them, and that's what it came down to. And the guys, and I don't want to say the guys who wanted it more, Duke wanted it as well, but the guys who could step up and were willing to make plays stepped up and make plays. And that
again, the epitome of that drive was that last play where you see Zeke Correll take the deep breath on 4th and 16, and then just absolutely
another great part of that video.
Just stonewall that defensive tackle that's trying to create pressure. It's so hard. Like my favorite coach that I had in terms of football was my freshman year of college, and it was unfortunate because after that he ended up leaving, and we transitioned to a new head coach. But he always made the analogy about how football was just so similar to boxing, and he would always study boxing fights and watch a lot of boxing matches because it shows a lot about character, and it shows a lot about guts and resiliency. And that's what Notre Dame was. Like they both teams were like these last 2 games, 8 quarters, Notre Dame was taking body blows and then sending body blows and then taking body blows and sending body blows. And so like they were just ultimately fatigued and gassed and, it almost counted out. And so at that point, I think that shows the most about, how gutsy are you? What is your true character? And it really showed me a lot about this team and going forward. Like they have a lot of fight to them. They have a lot of, character to them. And I think that's going to be very beneficial down the road for maybe some bigger games to come in the season.
PTS Notre Dame Disorder says we won out of luck. They shouldn't have rushed 3. If they don't, they win. That may be true, but look at all the things we were pointing at about Notre Dame's strategy against Ohio State. It's really just a complete inverse, like a mirror. The games were almost won in the same way. And we were talking about those graphs, Jesse, that you sent with, like all the teams on the line and who's above the line and who's below the line. Notre Dame was almost in the exact same spot Ohio State was in a week earlier. The win probability was completely in Notre Dame's favor at the end of the Ohio State game, but Ohio State ends up winning. Maybe out of luck if Notre Dame doesn't.
Well, I said it earlier.
Has all 11 on the field, but my point is, maybe you can say luck came into it, but their mental state of mind and their fortitude also played a lot into it because of the experience that they had a week earlier. That gave them some of the resolve, I think, at the end of that game.
Listen, I don't feel bad about how Notre Dame won against Duke just solely off the fact of how they lost against Ohio State. You could almost say that the games were like carbon copy, mere copies of each other, except, Notre Dame was Ohio State in the Duke game, right? Like Notre Dame got outplayed, I think, in most regards, but they found a way to win at the end. And that's what happened in the Ohio State game. And so for a lot of people who felt like Notre Dame got cheated out of a win against Ohio State, well, I'm sure there's a ton of people who feel like Duke got cheated out of a win against Notre Dame. So those games kind of replaced each other for me. They were almost like a flip-flop.
D-Rock said, what was the actual 4th and 16 call? We may never know. I mean, it was a pass play. We know it was a pass play. He dropped back to pass, and, he wasn't able to find, Rico Flores, as Vince and I were talking about, was open for a little bit. And if, that was still not going to be an easy throw, because from where Hartman was, he's back near midfield, and Flores is across the 30-yard line sitting there. And so on a diagonal, you're talking about probably roughly 40 yards or so in the air to make that throw. It was not going to be an easy throw. But it was obviously a pass play. Again, PTS Notre Dame Disorder says that performance won't beat USC. Agreed. He said, I'll take the win, but incremental improvement is more important. And you're right.
Well,
Just let me finish here first. That performance won't beat USC, but again, USC is not going to have that level of defense. Like, you still have to give some credit to the guys on the other side of the ball for forcing you into some of the mistakes that you make.
Elko's defense is unbelievable. And just the way that they were able to play, and you highlighted, like, this is going to be probably the two toughest defense that they have to play back to back. And to me, while Notre Dame, like, we can be disappointed with X's and O's and execution and, not scoring enough points and et cetera, I think they they gained a step or grew in terms of what we've been talking about in the past. Can they finish teams? Can they, when things aren't going right, can they make a way to make it work? That was Marshall and Stanford last year. They played like crap, had opportunities at the end to get it done, and they simply did it. And I think that's the bigger picture growth that you have to look at in terms of this game. Is you're not going to grow in every aspect of the game, every game, but you're going to have to take it where you made the biggest strides. And I think they made the biggest strides and learning how to actually finish a game and coming back. And also, again, just digging down and finding that kind of next level, essentially. I just think that they tapped into something that they haven't tapped into before.
Yep. All right. So ABC went to the Riley Leonard's mom and the crowd shots at the end of the first half quite a bit during their broadcast the other night. I don't think you and I talked about this last week. I think this was a Vince and I topic. What did you think about the mom crowd shots during the game?
It's too much. It's overplayed especially because there was a huge segment about it in game day and all leading up to it about how his mom texts him all the time that he sucks and this and that. And it's once the game starts, I really don't care about it anymore. It just and the thing is too is those parents don't want to, they're going through the emotions of the games themselves, right? Like, they don't need the camera on them at all times. So it's just too drawn out and too much for me at the end of the day, especially because they spent so much time before the game focusing on Riley Leonard's relationship with his mom.
I just hate it. I think it's lazy attempt at creating drama. It's like, oh, Riley Leonard's playing. And obviously I tweeted about this for those who saw it during the game. Riley Leonard's playing. Oh, now his mom is nervous as she's standing there in the stands. And obviously, if he does something well, he's going to be excited. It's like, how much do we need this? How many other guys had parents in the stands? There were a lot of them, I imagine, right? But you didn't see any of them. But for whatever reason, they decide they need that linger. So it's too much. It's too much for me, especially when they get hung up on it. Like every play. It's like, okay, here's the play. Now we're cutting back to mom and whatever she's doing, chewing her fingernails or texting or whatever it happens to be. It's just, it's too much. And I give, like, you don't see it in NFL games for the most part. There were some in the preseason games, like Aiden Hutchinson's family, and it was like his mom what just happened? Are you watching the game, or what are you actually doing in the stands? I guess that leads to the other question, though. Would you rather see that or Taylor Swift reacting to everything the Chiefs do during the game?
Um, I would. I wish I could say neither, but
I will say this:
I guess I would go with the Taylor Swift one.
NBC does a good job during Notre Dame games of not doing this cliche garbage that we're talking about with like the constant cutting to the parents. They have never, kind of. I'm not saying they've never shown a parent, but they've never relied on that to create drama during and like the whole Taylor Swift. It's like, okay, Isaiah Pacheco scored a touchdown. I guess we've got to show Taylor getting happy now because Travis Kelce's not scoring a touchdown. It's definitely overkill. The fact that she was on the Chiefs charter the other night, NBC came fully prepared to play it up. Do you think this whole thing is a publicity stunt?
Well, you kind of beat me to my hot take here. I have a conspiracy theory that the NFL reached out to these two and said, we want you guys to, basically entertain this idea of you guys dating, because the NFL is going to gain millions of new viewers and followers if they know that Taylor Swift is involved. They're tapping into a different demographic that they've never had viewership or an audience from in the past. And so if you're bringing on more and more viewers, and we know that's what it's all about in terms of viewers and generating money and everything, why not ask a guy to, one of the most popular NFL players and one of the most popular female artists to have some sort of relationship, because you're now gaining a group of people who probably have never watched football before.
And that's exactly it. You've got the Swifties who are invading it now. And I don't want to get too hung up on this because we got people like One for the Kipper. Oh, let's not talk about Taylor Swift. But it's like, it's invading 2 weeks in a row. It has invaded the broadcast on 2 different networks. And if it's on a third network here coming up pretty soon, they're going to play it up as well. Like, do you remember when Tony Romo was dating Jessica Simpson?
Oh,
do you remember,
yeah.
like that whole
everything was blamed on Jessica Simpson. Bad game. He must have been hanging out with Jessica Simpson.
That's
good
exactly
game.
Right.
Jessica Simpson must have given him a good kiss before the game.
It's different when you're a tight end, though, I guess, than a quarterback dating a pop star. So I don't know. That was something. But they did, they didn't play it up quite the same. But I remember the cutaways to Jessica Simpson as well, doing her cheering and her, stuff, wearing the Tony Romo jersey and all that. It seems it's definitely much. It's definitely a bit much. But when you've got arguably the most famous person in the world right now at your football games, I think you're going to play it up. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Calbasas, California wide receiver Aaron Butler has decided to shut down his senior season of high school football so that he can focus on graduating early and enrolling at the University of Colorado in December.
I think it's absolutely stupid because, I think that everyone should kind of get their full high school experience. And I think college is not always going to be there, but if you're a recruit like this guy, it's always going to be there, right? And so there's no reason to me to shut down the high school season early where it's guaranteed, and the memories and your friends and everything that goes along with it, that you're willing to take a gamble on. Like, what if he's a complete bust, or maybe he gets hurt and he never gets to play again type situation, right? And so, like, I get it in terms of if he's super talented and wanting to just, get ahead and enroll early. And, because we've seen guys at Notre Dame do that before, but we've never seen guys kind of shut down their high school season early in order, to get on campus a little bit quicker, at least at Notre Dame. So I'm not in favor of it. I don't really see the benefit of it, I guess is what I'm saying.
I'm really kind of amazed that it's taken this long for this trickle down into high school, since you do have early enrollments and, you can graduate early from high school and get into your school at, midterm and that kind of thing. I'm kind of amazed because it obviously started a few years ago with the guys opting out of the bowl games, and it's taken to this point for this to happen. The only, the other side of it is Eli Raridan he's going to make his return this week after tearing his ACL twice in less than a year. Now, it was a different sport, but Eli tore his ACL for the first time playing high school basketball. And he retoured, of course, playing football for Notre Dame. So it's like, I can kind of understand, like, if you've got this scholarship and you are going to go on to bigger and better things, I can kind of understand it. I do agree with what you're saying. Like, if all these guys start shutting down their high school seasons, what are you going to have left out there? But the guy, just like these NFL guys, is protecting his future as well. So I don't know what you can do about it.
I don't think there's anything you can do. It's just a personal decision. If you're okay, with kind of, I guess, weighing out the pros and cons, and the pros of one side outweigh the pros of the other, then you got a decision. I think if it were me and I were in his shoes, I don't think I would be making the same decision.
Yeah. PTS says world's most famous people: Deion Sanders, Trump, The Rock. I don't know. All those people that filled those stadiums, like every city she went to, it was like full NFL stadium 3 nights in a row, man. They were packing that thing is. She on
did
top of the
3
world
or 4
right now.
shows in Atlanta. And then I remember when I was in it, because I was in Atlanta for a wedding and she was getting ready to come through, luckily after we were leaving, and an Uber driver said no one has ever done that at a concert venue in Atlanta. No one has ever sold it out and done 3 or 4 nights in a row.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that she's by any means, like, I don't have any Taylor Swift, in my Apple Music or Spotify or I don't listen to Taylor Swift, but I know who she is. That's for sure. And a lot of other people know who she is. Anthony says Jordan and Tiger, maybe 20 years ago, but not now. Taylor Swift is up there, man. Cowboys beat the Patriots 38-3. Bill Belichick's worst loss of his career on Sunday. Scale of 1 to 10. How sure are you the end is near for Belichick?
So I am, near is a relative term. If 10 is, he's out the door at the end of the season, I'm going to give this about a 4 or a 5. I think the only thing Bill Belichick is chasing at this point is the all-time career wins list, and that's Don Shula at the top.
Needs 19.
Yeah,
19 wins.
And so
at this rate, it's going to take him 5 years, I think.
And that's what I'm ultimately getting at, is I don't think he's going to stop until he gets there, no matter how bad his teams are. And so if that takes him 3 years, if that takes him 4 years, 5 years, however long that takes, I don't think that that the Cowboys giving him his worst loss has any impact on that or gets him closer to the door. I think, again, he's very dead set on getting that, being the top kind of career wins guy when it's all said and done. I don't know if you saw this. I saw it in passing maybe a week or 2 ago that Don Shula made some comments about Bill Belichick as well, and it really rubbed him the wrong way. And so he's even on more of a path, or to prove a point, to get past Shula at the end of the day.
I think he's at the point where maybe things are passing him by a little bit. He's over.
And that's the argument, is do you sacrifice this in terms of legacy and not knowing when to quit at the end of the day?
Yeah. And
are you really willing to have 3 horrible seasons to end your career just because you're trying to pass someone on the all-time win list?
And that's it. I think that, like, his whole thing, the reason he wants to keep going is just spite because of the things that Shula has said about him, and he wants to catch Shula. But again, he is 19 wins away. He's not getting it even in the next 2 years. It's going to take him at least 3, and at the rate that he's going, I mean, look, he got to draft a quarterback in the first round for a first time, and he took Mac Jones, and look where that's got him. It's not looking too good, right? I think the question is going to be, how long is Robert Kraft going to put up with it? And because there's some tension there. And if Robert Kraft does decide that it's time to change directions and go someplace else, who's going to give Belichick the chance? And what's that going to turn into ultimately? What's that situation going to look like? So I'm at a 7. I just because it is not looking good right now. Things worked a lot better when he had Tom Brady and he could tie that whole thing together. But that whole roster is just not in a good place right now. And defense is supposed to be their thing. And their defense did not look too good the other day as well. And it's not looked that good this season either. Ed3 said 14-year-old girls will not determine the most popular person in the world. Again, those stadiums aren't just packed with 14-year-old girls. There's a heck of a lot more than 14-year-old girls when you're packing football stadiums 3 nights in a row in each city. It ain't just 14-year-old girls. You're right. 14-year-old girls won't. There's a lot more people who are paying attention to Taylor Swift than just the 14-year-old.
I have coworkers that go and that have
I know.
This girl I work with bought 3. She bought tickets to the Chicago show, the Cincinnati show, and the Pittsburgh show.
I assume she's older than 14.
Yeah, she's 28.
Sorry, I got caught chomping on my ice. Buck Showalter dismissed by the Mets this week. Mr. Cubs fan, would you want Buck in Chicago on the north side next year?
I wouldn't want Buck Showalter. I think the game is ultimately past him. I think the Mets made a bad decision in getting him.
He was National League Manager of the Year last year. They won over 100 games last year.
Yeah. I'm not buying it. I am as much as so the thing is about this conversation, it would imply that David Ross is going to get let go, and that's just not going to happen. And so I just think that, implying him to be a Cubs coach, I don't know. I've not thought about the Cubs since.
Am I reigniting something here?
Yeah, ever since they got swept by the Braves, I've really just kind of put the season on the back burners. I've been slowly separating myself from the Cubs. Listen, on September 7th, they had a 90% chance of making the playoffs, and they're not in the playoffs right now. So
now I don't think your guy, you're in Cleveland, you're a pseudo guards guy. I don't think your guy Tito, I think it's more health stuff with him.
It's the health stuff.
Aside. Like if Tito were healthy enough to stick around, would he?
Oh yeah.
Like you'd go for that?
Tito on the Cubs, baby.
I think Buck Showalter is a good turnaround guy. I just too much stuff happened with that Mets, right?
I just feel like they had a lot of injuries at the beginning of the season, and then who's their owner? Cohen, I think is his name. I think he also didn't put them in some advantageous situations as well. I think a lot of it has to do with ownership and not just the head coach.
Yep, I agree. But you're right. I don't think David Ross is going anywhere. I did see the other day they were, giving him the praise and patting him on the back and all that stuff. I'm not completely sold on him, but I'm also, and I've brought this up with you before, because the Cubs are, like most of baseball is analytically driven, but I think the Cubs are a very analytically driven organization, and I don't know how much is actually Ross calling the shots versus him just basically being a middleman. That's what I don't know. How much is actually on David Ross? How much is on the guys above him who are just feeding him the information, the stats and the analytics and stuff like that. I wanted to mention Tim Wakefield, the former Pirates and Red Sox knuckleballer, before we wrap things up. He unfortunately is people have probably heard, passed from brain cancer over the weekend. And when I think of Tim Wakefield, I think beyond the knuckleball, and you've seen a lot of people, like if you paid attention to social media and some other stuff these last few days, throwing praise at him. Like you talk about the ultimate team guy, the 2004 ALCS, when the Red Sox were in the midst of falling behind 3-0.
Didn't he pitch on short rest?
Well, no, he didn't. He didn't pitch on short rest. He was supposed to start Game 4, but Tim Wakefield, with his team, with the Red Sox getting obliterated in Game 3, gave up his start in Game 4, and said, and told Terry Francona, he got the last 9 outs of Game 3 when the Red Sox were getting blown out to save the bullpen, to give the team the chance to come back in Game 4. And like that, to me, is the epitome of what a team guy Tim Wakefield was. And like you've seen, so many good things said about it. I think he got overlooked as, again, a guy with a knuckleball, kind of a gimmicky thing. The guy was drafted as a first baseman. And when things didn't pan out for him as a first baseman, he worked on this knuckleball that his dad taught him, and he turned it into a long big league career and obviously helped the Red Sox win a couple of World Series. So very, very sad, and especially just the way things transpired, the last few days with Schilling, making it public when Wakefield didn't want it public. But very, very sad. And again, like, rest in peace, Tim Wakefield, ultimate team guy, I think.
Yeah, you started to kind of get into Tim Wakefield. Like, we're talking about a guy who made a living on, kind of the 3/4 action, not completely sidearm, not completely over the top. He was about, 3/4. And he just threw that knuckleball consistently, right? Like, and that knuckleball was only coming in at like 60, maybe 70 miles per hour, right? His fastball was probably, around 75, and a curveball, again, that was around 60. He is not your prototypical pitcher, and largely was overshadowed on those Red Sox teams because there was Pedro Martinez, there was Curt Schilling in the rotation. Like, he wasn't the star premier pitcher, but like you said, he was the ultimate team player. He did things knowing, what was going to give his team the best chance and not getting caught up in, what was personally best for him. He knew his skill set. He knew he wasn't a dominant pitcher, but he knew what his role was and how he could help the team at the end of the day. And he ended up being a World Series champion, and really just a great person overall as well. You never heard bad things about talking, when talking about Wakefield, and hearing how, the impact that he had on his teammates and how highly his teammates spoke of him. It's just really sad to see a guy go like that, just so young, right? Like, he was only in his 50s.
57. Yep. And as Michael said, was Wakefield the pitcher that allowed the walk-off to Aaron Boone? It was the year before, 2003 ALCS, that he did give that up. But again, a year later, he was played a pivotal part, maybe indirectly, in helping the Red Sox mount that comeback, the only 3-0 comeback, down 3-0 comeback in postseason history. And so again, rest in peace to Tim Wakefield. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. We went pretty long, almost an hour and a half that we went tonight. A lot of good stuff that we had, though, tonight. I teased this yesterday. I'm going to tease it again. Special co-host coming up with me tomorrow for the Mailbag Show. I think everybody's going to like it. So be here. You won't be here. Vince won't be here. But the special co-host will be here. So I think everyone's going to be excited.
I don't even know who the co-host is. I might have to tune in from my airplane and see what we got going on.
You do that, and you will see the special co-host right here with me answering questions on the Mailbag Show. Thank you very much, D-Bag. No, it is not Rick Pitino. There will be no Rick Pitino here tomorrow. Kalen, it could be you. We will see. We will see. Hit the like button on your way out, and of course, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will talk to you tomorrow when the special co-host is here on IB Nation Sports Talk.